We have not lots of new faces, but we've got some new faces, so that's exciting. Thank you all for being here. Monthly departmental reports. I take it my fellow commissioners got theirs in their packet and probably have looked at them.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
Anything?
Very good.
They're good?
Everything looks
Good
fine.
on your side?
Yep.
Good on my side. Again, thank you, department heads, for putting them together as usual. Very well put together. Thank you all. Next item, which may be why a lot of you are here, election equipment. Donna Maskus, County Clerk.
Good evening, Commissioners. Donna Maskus, Ellis County Clerk, Election Officer. First of all, I'd like to address a letter that all commissioners, and it went out to the media, and it was from Mr. John Bird. And he referred to Oregon, the state of Oregon, as a gold standard. And he'd like Kansas to be one of those members. But Kansas cannot be a gold standard to election. Oregon is a mail ballot election only. Kansas legislature has in place that the only time you can do a mail ballot election would be for a question, a yes or a no vote. And of course, Oregon is just using paper ballots, and that's where we're going. And he states that they don't use machines to run their elections. So we will be purchasing new elections in Ellis County because of the new law on the post-election audit. That means that whenever there's an election, the Kansas Secretary of State will tell us which offices need to be audited. The county will hire a 3-member board, and that audit will be conducted looking at the ballots of those offices before the canvass. And of course, we will have, Kansas has ADA requirements. That means somebody with handicaps is able to vote just like you and I under normal conditions. So we do have the machines available at each poll site, and that's according to Kansas law. My deputy did she made a couple phone calls to counties in Oregon, and she found out some interesting information. The first one went to a county, Jackson County, that had 220,000 population, and then Tillamook County, and that had 27,000 population. Both of those said they were strictly mail ballot, which the state mandates, and they do use, for counting, they do use machines. And in fact, one of them said they do use ES&S election equipment, and in fact, they use an 850 and we use a 650 currently. So, they do use modern technology to count their votes, and that's what we're looking at also. Okay, in February, we invited 3 election vendors to Ellis County, and they all have certified equipment through the Kansas Secretary of State's office. That means that can be used for Kansas elections. And I appreciate the public's interest and also the commissioners that could be at some of the demonstrations. And my election board supervisors, I called and talked to them to see what their outlook after they attended the demonstration, what they thought. And one said, "It looks easier. We can do it. I like what I see." And 3 of them said that they would go with the first demonstration, which was ES&S. They were most impressed with that one. And most of those came to all 3, so I do appreciate that. Okay, you say paper ballot system. Well, we talked about the new law, so we want to cover that law. And we will have to hire 3-member boards to count those before the canvass, so that will be in place. And we looked at the 3 election vendors. The first one was ES&S. They're out of Omaha, Nebraska. That is their equipment. They make their equipment. They've been in business over 40 years. They are our current vendor. 12 years ago, we did purchase their supplies. I will comment that 12 years ago, it made a lot of difference because we had grant fund available. Those were HAVA funds that were made available, state funds and federal funds. And then Henry Atkins, and they're out of Clinton, Nebraska, or Clinton, Missouri. And then Election Source out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. So that's the location of those. Another thing that when you're looking at new equipment, we need to look at our election in Ellis County. We have a polling site that has under 200 qualified voters, and that's in Shinshin City. My recommendation is that we move those voters to another poll site, which would be St. Nicholas Church. And this was a hard decision because they are a third-class city. But to better use the equipment and the cost, this is a decision I strongly feel. Currently, all the townships in Ellis County vote at St. Nick's except Ellis Township votes at the VFW in Ellis. And also Herzog and Victoria Townships vote in Victoria VFW. So otherwise, everyone's at St. Nick's. And of course, there's other options too. You can always request a mail ballot that we're glad to mail out. And then 2 weeks before election, we have the doors open upstairs, and we'll have voting going on 2 weeks before election. Up until the day before election at noon is when you have to cut it off. So those options are available to voters, any voter. Okay, so we had the 3 bids, and I did send that out with the agenda, and you can see in the spreadsheet that the low bid was Henry Atkins, and the next bid was ES&S, and then Election Source. And I'd like to say that my recommendation that I hope the commission will vote to go along with ES&S. And my points on this, they're allowing a $6,000 credit that can be used before the end of next year. So that could be applied to our ballots, could be applied to more equipment, or whatever the needs are. And also, price per ballot. We're talking about ballots. So we're going to have ballots that are going to run through the ballot tabulator. So the difference of that price is 11 cents. So it is cheaper on the ES&S side. Right now, or last week, we had 17,978 qualified voters in Ellis County. If we looked at buying each of those ballots for an upcoming election, Henry Atkins, it'd be a little over 5,000. ES&S, it'd be a little over 3,000. So that difference is almost $2,000, and that's just for one election. So that does make a difference there. Another factor that, okay, when we have annual license and maintenance fees, it was $80 less with ES&S. And one factor that I strongly look at is that we have write-in votes. And in Kansas, we want, what was the intent of the voter? And on ES&S, even if the oval is not marked at the ballot, it records all of those write-in votes. Henry Atkins is working on a change to their system, but right now, if that oval is not colored in, it will not pick up that write-in. So that is one factor I strongly look at, that I like the ES&S setup. And of course, we've had ES&S for 12 years. They've been in business for 40 plus years. They support their equipment. They make their equipment. They've been good on maintenance. They've been good on support. So I do hope that you will consider and allow to going with the ES&S bid on election equipment for $85,391.50. Then with the new equipment, we have the poll books. And you talk to any of the board workers, they love the poll books. That means when you check in at the poll site, you give them your driver's license, they scan that Kansas driver's license, and it calls up your name. And it's real fast, real slick, works really well. But right now, what we have, that equipment is not compatible with the new equipment. So I'm looking at election. Well, I will note the other two do not have equipment that this will work with. So Election Source, who was the third, it was the top bid. I mean, it was the highest bid. Anyway, they do have election equipment, the poll books, and that would be $24,896. And that would be compatible with the new equipment, and I would hope that you would consider that also with your action today. Do you have any questions of me?
Just curious, is our 12-year-old equipment worth anything to anybody?
Well, you look at that, and I'll tell you, I think they were very good to us. They did give us some trade-in values.
Yeah, I didn't know if we had another source that might give us more as well.
No.
I was getting to. No.
You know, there's no use for the Ivatronics, but our 70 Ivatronics, they did work really well. I think that was proven last year, and they have been good equipment for us. So we will have, 9 poll sites, 1 advance board, and then election night. So that's what the equipment I'm looking at to satisfy all those needs.
So the 11 precinct counters, them are just counting the ballots at that site, correct?
Right, and you as a voter, Dean, you can put your ballot in, because we want the voter to put their ballot in, and that count, you'll see it move up. So the votes are tabulated right there. Oh. Then the workers at the end of the evening, they'll bring back the little device, we'll put it in, it runs all the reports right then and there.
Okay.
So everybody that has new equipment, they said you just won't believe how nice it is, because everybody's looking at new equipment pretty well throughout the state.
And if I'm correct, you said Barton County just went with this same system, is that
They
correct?
did, and that wasn't their low bid, but they had the strong points like we saw in our demonstrations also.
Okay.
Donna, you said their support is real good. Do they have service personnel available?
They do. In fact, the service gentleman, Jack, used to live at Wilson, and he recently moved at Hutch. But, he actually lives in Kansas. Now, the others, I'm not sure where, but all of them try to have support, especially on election night. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think they all do good. It's just that Henry Atkins isn't as large as ES&S. ES&S supplies ballots for all over, outside the United States, I've been told, by personnel. So, it's just a big company, and I think they've proven themselves, and especially with the election system on, our Kansas voter system, is through ES&S. So we're all utilizing ES&S.
And I guess my last question for you is, if we approve this tonight, like when we have our first election, is there a chance we're going to have somebody from their company here on election night?
Right. They were very gracious, all of them, saying the support would be here.
Okay.
So, yeah, they're going to be here during the election, and, even to train the board workers, they would be willing, because state law, we do have election schools before that all workers have to attend before an election. So I think they all were grand with that.
Okay. Butch, any other questions?
Did ES&S give you any indication of about how long their machines would be good for, what their useful life
nobody can
expectancy
do
is?
that. Last time they would say 10 years, and I think that's what most of them say, because technology changes so fast on us.
Okay. Dustin, questions?
I do. I have a few questions and a few statements. I'm glad, Donna, that you alluded to something that's been on my mind now for a little over a month, when I received a letter in my email box and telling me, all kinds of things that was then released to the press, and it was John Bird of all people asking us 3 commissioners to be fiscally conservative. So I kind of want to go over a little bit of it if I can, Donna,
Sure.
because I really grilled you on it. I wanted to make sure that I knew the law and I knew what was going on here before we made a decision like this, and I'm perfectly confident in what you've come with. I actually got a set in on the ES&S demonstration. I like that their ballots are less expensive. I like the tabulators, but there's a couple things that I want the citizens of Ellis County to know now that this has been put through the news media. When they walk into the polling booth in November and they see a machine sitting there, that it wasn't us being idiots with their money, that it was the law, right?
Correct.
So the first thing I want to do is kind of just run through this letter real quick. I'll skip over a lot of the parts, but maybe jump back on a couple of things and maybe just hammer them home so people have a good idea what we're doing here, right? The first paragraph of this letter I got, I'll just read the first paragraph because I think it's alluding to the whole problem of the entire op-ed that he sent, and it says, this letter is to ensure that you are aware of the unreasonable, unreliable, and dangerous machine voting in Ellis County elections and ask that you agree to budget only for paper ballots. Please do all in your power to persuade the county clerk to scrap any plans to use machines. That would not be legal, correct?
Well, right, because we have to have provisions for the ADA requirement. That comes under the HAVA Act, yes.
So I brought this just so everybody knows what that is. This is the HAVA Act. It is to allow for ADA compliance for people who may not be able to vote the way that a normal individual, perfectly functioning individual can. And if you can hold that for me, Dean, I'll just read what it says on there in case others can't see it. But basically, it's called the Help America Vote Act, and it was passed in 2002. So it's been law for quite a while, which is why everybody has started adopting these machines. We're just talking about one machine in order to be in compliance with this law. And really, it's a machine, but it's more like a giant marker. It'll print out their paper ballot after they fill it out, and they can verify that that ballot's correct before they actually cast it. If it wasn't done right or properly, when they read it, they can rip it up and do another ballot, right? So the Help America Vote Act requires jurisdictions responsible for conducting federal elections, which would be all of our election sites, to provide at least one accessible voting system for persons with disabilities at each polling place in federal elections. The accessible voting system must provide the same opportunity for access and participation, including privacy and independence, that other voters receive. So we were trying to be in compliance, right? And so right away in this letter and that's okay, Dean, you can pull that down now. Right away in this letter, I took issue with it because I knew that wasn't the law. And this is an attorney who would have any opportunity to call you just like I did and ask why we would be looking at any kind of machine, right? Did he ever contact you and ask you?
No.
Okay. The next paragraph, which is was really what kind of hit home and really didn't make me happy at all, and that's because it was an attack on you and how you maintain and handle these machines. I'll read it. The last election highlighted these issues. It was discovered that the existing machine-based voting system was expensive. Okay, yes, I agree with expensive. Not well maintained, I take issue with. And easy to hack and unnecessary. These are machines, not computers, right? They're not hooked to the internet.
Correct.
They cannot be hacked by somebody. Okay, so the idea of hacking, and I don't know if Mr. Bird knows what the idea of hacking is, but I just want to go back. That's not a thing that happens with these machines. The only way you can hack them is the same way you would hack a calculator in front of you. You would have to open the machine up, do something with it. It would have to be a serious internal issue for us to have a problem, right? Okay, so they can't be hacked. Now, not well maintained was the thing I took a little issue with and where I want to come into defense of you. What do you imagine the temperature of this room is right now? About 70 degrees?
Mm-hmm.
Do we keep this building at about 70 degrees all the time?
Pretty close.
It's comfortable.
Are the machines stored here?
Yes, over in the corner. They certainly are.
Are they rained on? Are they snowed on? The only time they're ever outside is when we move them to the place that they go to. They were never stored at Public Works, correct?
No.
Okay, see, these are things that were said during this last election process, and lucky for me, I was the chair of the Ellis County Republican Party and involved in the process. So, I was hearing some of these complaints ahead of time and already getting answers. So the idea that we can't even give answers and still be accused of things is a little bit of a problem for me. But there was one thing in this op-ed that struck with me a little bit. It was something that I think would be very reasonable to question, and it's in a couple paragraphs down. He talks a little bit about this Everest study and things of that nature, which, by the way, the idea that says save taxpayer money, use paper ballots, once again, by law, we're required to have a paper trail in the next election cycle, right? So we were going to have to use paper ballots either way. And so I don't know if this was just political posturing against us, so that when we did vote for paper ballots, he could say, oh, see, look what I made, the dumb Republicans on the county board do, But I want to go to this because this is one of the things that I think people were concerned about. And I think I have the reasoning behind it. It says, Ellis County is not immune to these dangers. In the 2018 Kansas House Representatives election for the 111th District, it was realized that there were large discrepancies in certain voting districts that almost never happen. Precinct reports came back showing that voters within certain precincts would vote for a certain candidate around 65 to 70% of the time on paper, and in the same precinct, the voters supposedly voted for the candidates as low as 43% of the time via machine. Quite a discrepancy, right? You would think there's maybe something going on there. Ellis County showed signs of major anomalies in voter behavior, and political experts or analysts would tell you that many of these events just do not happen on their own. I'd agree, right? Would you agree? Okay, so I dove into that a little bit. I wondered why paper ballots would be doing so well for Eber Phelps and the machines would be doing better for Barb, right? And then I stumbled upon John Bird's Facebook account. And I am also the chair of the Ellis County Republican Party, so I want to share this, which is a post by John Bird that is a public post that he made November 1st, 2018, a few days before the election. It says paper is safer. It's an entire diatribe of why people, mainly people that would follow his advice, right, would vote with paper ballots. It was shared 27 times. It had 72 plus likes and other issues. It had, I believe, over 80 comments. So this is just one Facebook post of the Democrat Party in this county pushing people toward paper ballots. And that's okay, but I can tell you as the chair of the Ellis County Republican Party, we didn't say anything about how people should vote. In fact, I voted on a machine. I always go in and I ask what's quicker because I have things to do. So the idea that there's an anomaly and that paper might show up better amongst the Democrat in this race seems pretty obvious to me. I think if we talked to Eber Phelps, he would talk about how they were talking to people about voting by paper as well. So far from the anomaly that he makes it seem, this was the intent. The intent was to get their paper ballot votes up. So my question to you, Donna, is, did we have quite a few more paper ballots than expected?
I did have some information available. I don't have that in hand, but I'm glad to share it. Okay. And it clearly showed the touch screens were used more at all levels. Of course, advanced, you have the mail-out ballots.
Yeah, what I'm alluding to is the idea that didn't we run out of paper ballots? We had quite a bit more paper ballot activity than is normal, but obviously
in some areas, right?
Okay.
Right.
But those touch screens are always easier. There was a lot of them there, and like I said, a typical voter comes in and goes, "How can I get out of here the quickest I can and get my ballot cast?" Okay, so the idea that there's discrepancies and things of that nature. The last thing I wanted to hit on is the idea that he's telling us that people came up to him and told him that they tried to vote for Eber Phelps on those machines, and then somehow it showed up that it was Barb Wassinger. And to that I say, all of those machines have a review screen, correct? When I vote on them, it says, here's who you're voting for before you say I'm going to cast this ballot. And you can go back. Within 2-3 people, you would know there was a problem with a machine. And you wouldn't just take probably the advice of 1 or 2 of your supporters who shows up after the election in a close loss and says, hey, I've had this, issue. I think I tried to vote for Eber and it voted for Barb. Wouldn't that be a better way to go about
I think if it didn't vote the way they wanted to, they would be telling the election board worker. And we had no comments. I mean, no problems of that sort on election day. So that concerned me.
Right. And in close races, that's probably one of my biggest frustrations. All of a sudden we go into conspiracy theories. We start trying to make excuses for why we may have not won. And even if it means a couple of our supporters tell us what we want to hear, then we take to the news media to try and make an election seem like it wasn't what it was supposed to be, which is that Ellis County voted, or the 111th District voted for Barb Wassinger in that race. Okay, the last thing, and it was something that you alluded to, is Oregon as this gold standard. I believe that's what he alluded to it as, the gold standard. In that time, he talks about this gold standard and how that Republicans and Democrats get along, and they believe that this is the best way to save money, and this is how you get voter turnout up, and things of that nature. So I decided, knowing the little bit I know about politics, I wondered how many Republicans there might be that would have a say in Oregon about whether or not this is the best way to conduct an election. In Oregon Senate, there are 18 Democrats and 12 Republicans. Not too bad, right? In their House, there are 60 Democrats and 22 Republicans. It is much more lopsided than a typical state towards Democrats. It also has a Democrat governor. He touts their 34 and under voting ratio. And the only reason I'm bringing this up, guys, is I'm a little concerned with the idea. One, I think that mail-in ballots are necessary when somebody can't make it to the polling booth. But the idea of mailing ballots out to every single voter to see if they return them has a huge issue and problem in what we call ballot harvesting. It's people going door to door, either claiming like they are a representative of the government to take their ballot and mail it for them, or it even gets into worse things like standing over somebody on their coffee table, handing them $20, and watching them fill out their ballot. It takes out anonymity in the voting process. And that's one of the most important things about the polling process. Right now, if somebody came up to me and they said, Dustin, I'll give you $20 if you vote for Bernie Sanders in this election. I'll take their money and I'll go vote for whoever I want. But when they're standing over me at a table and watching me and mailing that ballot for me, it leads to a lot of bad problems. And from a Democrat Party who already has a history of pretending like they are from a government agency, we were all at this. We saw the type of things that were sent in the mail that looked like they were from Donna Maskus' office, and they were not. So this is something that I think needs to be taken a little more seriously than just we need to do paper ballots, because obviously we were going to do that anyway. But the last thing I want to get into is this idea that somehow we were going to spend $300,000 on this thing. Immediately these estimates were coming in 60, 80, 100,000. We had the money saved up, but we had no intention of ever trying to overspend on this type of thing. I don't think you had that intention.
No, it was just the savings of dollars so we could afford when we needed to.
That's
Yes.
what she had in her election fund, was
Correct.
340,000 or
Right.
Correct.
in that area.
Great. So my thought process and with this is, guys, we're making a lot tougher decisions in voting machines. This is pretty easy for us, I would imagine. But the idea that we get torn apart in the press ahead of time, that this type of op-ed goes out before any research is done about what is going to happen in this process anyway, to me was a bit ridiculous. And I've been sitting on it for a while. I didn't respond to John when he emailed us the letter. I'll always take people's recommendations, but I don't want them to be political posturing. And I want them to be based on fact. And so, like I said, this is a simple thing for us. Donna, we're going to trust you. You're the one that's an expert on this. You're the one that's going to have to deal with these machines if we have problems, things like that. But all these are tabulation machines. I think it's a great idea that we have an idea how many people voted in any election before we start moving ballots around. And to me, I just wanted to address all these things to make sure that you were defended, those machines were taken care of. The idea that they weren't is unfair to you. And I think that, the idea that we have to answer to this is a problem in this county. I think that this is partisan. I think this is sour grapes, and I've lost a close election. You didn't see this from that, right? So with that, I'm ready to move on. I think your guys' thoughts on it, I like what she's come up with. I saw those machines, but do you guys have any objections to them?
Butch, do you have any further comment on?
No, I think Dustin said a lot there. I know after I got the letter, the one thing I told my wife is the last thing I ever want to do is turn Ellis County into Oregon. I think we're better than that anyway. So.
Exactly. No, I think Donna did her homework and her staff, and
Well, my staff, I have to commend my staff very highly. Yes.
for doing the research. Bobby, thank you for doing the research also, and like I say, you know more about the machines than I do. I definitely go along with your recommendation. It's obviously you and your staff have researched it, and if there's no further questions, gentlemen, I'd ask for a motion.
I move that the commission award the bid for election equipment to ES&S in the amount of $85,391.50 and also purchase poll pads from Election Source in the amount of $24,896.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second, Donna. Further discussion? None? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Thank you, Donna,
Thank you,
for
Donna.
you and your staff for all the work you did. We'll move on to Fitness Room Addition. Darren Myers, Emergency Management Director.
Good evening, Commissioners. Darren Myers, Director of Fire and Emergency Management. Hopefully not as hot of a topic, but I bring for you in front
Be
a
careful,
proposal.
Darren.
Hope not. Come together to follow up on a proposal that I brought to the Commission about a month or maybe two ago in regards to the basement of the Emergency Services Building and using quite a few different sources to fund a finished room down there to provide physical fitness equipment for our employees down there. Since then, the Commission asked to put out an RFP. We did the RFP, posted it in all ways as the county policy suggest. Had a pre-bid meeting. We had 7 different contractors around the state, around the county, come do the pre-bid meeting. And we did have one RFP response back from commercial builders, which you'll find in your packet this evening. The total cost of the project was a little more than I expected. So with that, I had brought back and narrowed the scope of the RFP down, which was stated within the RFP, in case there was too much or something we needed to reduce to save money. And that is why you see 6 different options in there to be able to reduce the cost for some of the stuff that's not necessarily part of the scope that we can get done, the overall objective of the project without spending as much money. I do want to recognize that we did have several different community members as well as companies that are wanting to help with this project. As you can see within your agenda packet, Planet Fitness has decided to donate 10 to 12 different fitness machines, ranging from ellipticals to arc trainers, bikes, and different, the physical fitness machines. And then working with Jacob Profit and Munch Fitness, he was trying to help us on the other end, going away from the cardiac stuff, which would be the treadmills and such, going to the strength training and get us some equipment that he has left over down in La Crosse from his old fitness facility down there. Trying to help also reduce the cost, I tried to apply for some grants. Since submitted a grant to Midwest Energy, and they've graciously gave us a $1,000 check that I have with me tonight if we decide to move this project forward, as well as the State Farm Agency with Matt Lyon, Community Good Neighbors Program, that also donated $500 as well. Jason Kennedy with EMS had been in contact with the Hayes Rec Commission, and they had just replaced their gym flooring down at their rec center, and they'd said that we could use all of their old gym flooring to put down there as well. That saved about $2,500 from finishing the floor in another manner. Adam Nappel is a certified HVAC contractor in town. He's donating all his labor to finish out the HVAC system to spec as what was designed with the building. And then to also save cost, we have a group of firefighters that will come down and paint the room, which is also savings of more than another $1,000 off the total cost of the project. So with that, the overall project came to $29,424. But with that $1,500 from Midwest Energy and State Farm, it takes the price down to $27,924. With that, I will ask if the commission has any questions.
Go ahead, Destin.
Yeah, this is partially my doing that this is on the agenda tonight. It was one of the few projects when we had our leftover money that I deemed something we should look into. So, the main questions I have for you, Darren, and obviously these things never come in the way you want them to. I think we had talked 15,000. What kind of value are we getting when we spend $27,924? If we were to just buy all this equipment that's being donated, talking floor, talking not getting all this help from all these wonderful people in Ellis County, how much would this cost us to build something like this?
Some of the pieces of equipment themselves, one single piece of equipment I know is $12,000 brand new, and that's one. The treadmills that we're looking at, 3 of them, they're over $8,000 a piece. We're having 10 different pieces of equipment that are going to range in value. I think by the time you look at the entire scope of the project, the finished room, all the equipment, it's well over $100,000 gym that we're going to be able to provide, minus all the in-kind donations, taking it down to that $27,000. So, I guess if I would have been more prepared or been able to prepare before the meeting, I could have put down an overall figure of what each machine would cost. They're not, the cost of them aren't commercially or readily available because they're commercial equipment being purchased by a large corporation.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I
just
figured that's a
research,
ballpark number, $100,000 value. I kind of would like to hear from you. I'd like to hear from Carrie and Jason as well. one of the main reasons I think this is a good idea is in recruitment for us, and in keeping the physical fitness of our EMS and our firefighters up, so we're not doing so much workman comp issues. If those guys would allude to that, do you think this is going to be something that's going to make it a little easier on you to recruit firefighters? And if you can get them recruited, keep them healthy and safe.
I think it's hard to put a true dollar figure on saying, the county's going to be able to save this much money on a work comp, because we can never forecast when someone's going to slip, trip, fall, hurt a back, or pull a shoulder. But I think this is definitely a step in the right direction to help eliminate some of those work comp claims. I think for the recruitment, I think it's absolutely a benefit to be able to help, saying, we're going to provide you, $100,000 to $150,000 gym to help stay in physical shape. I think that's just better for your quality of life too, to be able to go down there and, you have a bad call, you can go down there and release some stress, lift some weights, run on the treadmill. I can't really think of any negative aspects to this, besides obviously that we have to use some of the cash that we have left over from the sales tax funds.
Right.
But I'd more than welcome to let Kerry or Jason come up and speak as well.
Kerry's got his guys and gals have set up their own makeshift gym in one of the parking bays, because they like to get workouts in. I think it's really important to their job to stay physically fit.
Yes, I'd agree with everything that's been said so far. Recruitment, it might be a little more difficult than retention, because the newer people coming in the interview process probably don't know that you have those kinds of things. But the retention of employees, that is really important. In history, a back injury has been $10,000 to $15,000 in just medical costs. That doesn't include what it's going to cost you to backfill that employee's salary while they're off. So you're already halfway where you with one, not to mention knee injuries and things like that. So this is a very important asset to our agencies, all the public safety, and it's my understanding that this is going to be open to all of public safety agencies and have 24-hour access for it. So I think that's real important.
Butch, any comment?
Yeah, I think I'm impressed with the community support you got for this, Darren. There's a lot of people on board with this, and I think if we as a Board of Commissioners can look to the safety and well-being of our firefighters and EMS personnel, it's a step in the right direction.
I agree with both of you. You guys' comments, I'm dead on, and it was a great donation from all the above people. That's just a great addition to your guys' department up there, so I think it's a great idea.
What's the time frame if we were to approve this?
I'll get back in touch with commercial builders. Their expected start date is May 1st. Mm-hmm. Completion date is by the end of June. And that was before we limited the scope on doing some of the work, so it could be before that. Without the original alternate of just reducing the mud, tape, and paint portion of it, that basically took 3 weeks off. So assuming that they could still proceed starting May 1st, mid-June.
Okay.
Commissioner Ross, this is a little late
to
say this, but the EMS staff thinks it's so important that those, you alluded to the fact that they've got some machines in the apparatus area. They think it's so important that they own those machines.
Right.
They long ago ran through the ones that we owned, so they've purchased additional machines on their behalf.
Great.
Thanks, Gary. Another discussion? This time I'd ask for a motion.
Do we need a motion for the 29,424 or 27?
I think it'd be the 27,924.
27,924.
No. You need the motion for the 29,424 because that's what you're actually spending.
The rest of that is just income.
Be donated. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Phil.
I move that the commission award the fitness room bid from commercial builders minus options 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6, VLS Communications and Adam Napel in the amount of $29,424, funded through the excess sales tax collected from the building projects in Fund 129.
I'll second that motion.
Donna, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Thank you both.
On behalf of all the public safety personnel, thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Darren, don't run away. You're next. Mutual aid agreements.
I will add just one little comment. If the commission does wonder why there's two separate bids outside the scope of what the RFP stated between VLS and for the HVAC, was by keeping that out of the RFP, there's no other cost associated or inflation for having somebody else monitor that part of the project, so that's why they were kept separate.
Okay.
If you need a good project manager, I know of one.
He's already volunteered to help. Just joking. The second item here is for mutual aid agreements between Ellis County and many of our surrounding county fire departments, and I believe I've listed them all on here. To be exact, the Trigo County Fire Department, Graham County, Palco, Plainville, Russell County, Otis Fire District, Bison Fire District, Liebenthal, and McCracken, which are all the surrounding departments that we occasionally do work with throughout the years. I had sent this out to our county counselor. He had reviewed the agreement, and I had also sent this out to all of the departments listed below or on your agenda item for their attorneys to look at as well. As of tonight, I've already got 2 of them sent back. I figured the process would take a lot longer for me to send it to them, for their attorneys to approve it and get back. So maybe after the meeting tonight, if the commission so chooses to allow these mutual aid agreements to move forward, the chair can sign them. Is there any, I guess to start off, does all the commission know what a mutual aid agreement is between the departments?
Yes.
I do. I think you should probably state it for the record, though.
Okay. So I guess for the county fire department, a most likely scenario is a wildland fire, grass fire. It starts in one location. It expands rapidly due to whatever conditions we have, wind, the terrain, the nature, the extent. It grows. Our resources get taxed. It continues to grow, and we no longer have the resources to help manage the incident. We then call our neighboring fire departments surrounding whichever location the fire is in. If it's in the northwest corner, we may contact Trigo, Graham, or Palco departments to send trucks down to help assist with whatever incident we have. That mutual aid agreement kind of sets out the parameters of how we will request help, what they will send, the liabilities going back and forth outside your authority having jurisdiction, and if any damages or injuries happen, who's all liable for those. And it puts all that in black and white before the mutual aid is needed, so that way we all know what kind of umbrella we're protected under.
Great.
Thank you, Darren. Nope, I agree. Move ahead with them.
Now, Darren, emergency management has mutual aid agreements, don't they?
No.
No? Didn't they used to?
So there's, for the fire side, emergency management really don't play a role in that. It's technically the fire department's responsibility to form the mutual aid agreements. Once you expend your local resources and your local mutual aid agreements, then you reach out to your county emergency manager to see if he or she has any other resources available. Once those resources are consumed and used up, the emergency manager then reaches to the state. For large events, their state EOC may already be opened, and then they'll start pulling out resources. What we use at a state level to use those emergency management assets is a program called CRMCS, and forgive me, I can't remember what all that acronym stands for, but it's basically a credentialing management system that encompasses all ambulances in the state, fire trucks, grants that we receive from the Homeland Security Council. It puts them into a system, And if Ellis County has an incident and it says we need 20 ambulances or 20 brush trucks, you put that into the system. You say you want to spread it out to a 100-mile radius. It'll populate all those resources, contact them, and then send them your way. So that's how the emergency management plays the link between the local fire department and the state. And that program is somewhat new. It's several years old, but trying to get 105 counties and 600 different departments and however many EMS agencies, law enforcement agencies, hospitals, health departments, all those together to get all their information inputted. The actual ID cards that the commission is issued is part of that CRMCS program.
Okay.
Any other questions for Darren?
No?
No? I think everybody agrees to proceed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
I'll
Thank you,
have you
Darren.
sign the ones that I have later.
Okay. Great.
I also will give a quick update. The commission gave approval to move forward on selling the old tornado sirens, outdoor warning sirens. Currently, we have 15 sitting out at the landfill. I've sold all 15. 10 of those are for Ellis County, and 5 are for the city of Ellis. They still have one to remove, but I think I also have it sold too. So that will bring $7,500 in revenue back to the county off that project that we had by selling those to different departments from Kensington, Brownell, Utica, some couple different departments up or locations up in Washington County.
I know a few of those people out in Brownell and Utica.
Ted, I can't remember his name.
Burnbeck.
But yeah, they wanted. I think they're taking a couple of them. So
Yep.
I think at the very end we may only have one, but it's the worst one out there, which I kind of hard to sell. I thought I'd just give you a quick update. Thank you for your time.
Yep.
Thank
Thanks.
you, Darren. Reorganization of Environmental Division. Bill Ring, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. Bill Ring, Director of Public Works. In tonight's agenda packet, you should have an item where staff has taken a long, hard look at the Environmental Planning and Zoning Department and have brought forth a plan for asking for your approval of how we feel we can restaff the office and bring a savings in salary to approximately $6,800. I can read through all this, or I'm assuming you might have, and
Sure have.
but we've worked with the county administrator on this to come up with this plan to identify roles and responsibilities. We wrote 2 new job descriptions. We're taking the position now with the director, if you will, position now and bringing it from 116 to 114. And then we're taking of the 2 technical assistants, with they were both at a 109, going to a 107 as a beginning position, but where we can train that person in some of the basics, and as they spend more time there, if someone would leave in a position above them, we would have them fairly well trained to just be able to fall into that position, and then we could bring a new person on to start again. And we felt the cross-training and being able to staff the office, where it still is convenient to the citizens, and be able to provide some basic services should the other 2 be out, either be off vacation, out on inspection, whatever.
So it was very well put together, Bill. Thank you. Dustin, you have questions? Butch?
No, I don't have a lot of questions. I think it's nice you look at this and kind of have a plan of succession with this kind of an issue, too.
That is something, and I thank the county administrator. He was a big help in writing this to get it so that it was in a format that would read well. And he and I continuously do talk about succession planning, as we do at almost every executive team meeting every other Thursday, because of the importance of that, of having something in place where we can look to the future for what's in the best interest of the county once one of us would go on, retire or whichever.
Yeah, I would say this is a perfect example of the type of things I try to hit on all the time with county staff and heads of departments, is the idea of cross-training and succession and planning and stuff. And this is a perfect example. We found Mason. We found a wonderful worker, a rock star in the group that could learn all these things before we had a retirement. and we'll get surprised with retirements. We'll have issues that come up, and this is a great example of that department doing a wonderful job of setting it up to take on that position right away.
Yep, thank you, Bill. Bill, thank you for writing that also. Any other questions? If not, I'll ask for a motion.
I'd make a motion that the commission adopt the new job descriptions, titles, and pay grades as presented, reclassify the position held by Mason Reuter to Environmental Planning Supervisor, and delete the classification of Environmental Sanitary and Zoning Administrator effective April 21st, 2019.
We have a motion. We have a second.
I second that.
Motion and a second, Donna. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on. Bids on the elevator at LAC. County Administrator Philip Smith-Haynes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. County Administrator Philip Smith-Haynes. I have a number of items here this evening, starting with two bid processes that we recently have undergone. The first is related to the item that Mr. Myers presented to you earlier on that fitness room. This is the other project that your commission approved to spend funds that were excess proceeds of the sales tax. This is for an elevator in the secure area at the Law Enforcement Center. We did release bids. This was actually our third attempt at this. We had two failed RFP processes back in 2017. This time, thankfully, the bids all came in under what was budgeted and under the architect's estimate. There is a whopping total of $100 that separates the two lowest bids, which are both from respected local companies that we've dealt with in the past. Certainly would be comfortable with either of those that the commission would choose to award, but staff's recommendation is to include alternate one, which is replacement of the cab doors as a part of the project, and in that case, Commercial Builders would be the low bid by $100. So be happy to answer questions.
I don't have any, Phil. I thought it was very well put together again, and have to thank both of our local bidders, Commercial Builders and Paul Wurtenberger, for bidding the project and being that close at the end of the day. Dustin, any questions? No?
I'd agree. I think this is something, I rode that elevator one time, and that was enough for me, so I'll wait till they're finished getting that in good shape before I ride it again. But, I'm glad they came in under bid. That's great news. It wasn't something I was expecting, so is happy to see some savings there.
Yeah, the elevator's in need of replacement, so we need to get this done.
Mm-hmm. This time I'll ask for a motion.
I move the commission award the contract for improvements to the LEC elevator, including alternate number 1, to Commercial Builders in the amount of $180,900.
We have a motion. We have a second.
I second that.
Donna, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Phil, you're on again. Bids for stair removal at 718 Main.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, there's an old Eastern philosophy of yin and yang. So, for every good thing, there must be something not quite so good, right? So, we had wonderful results with our bid process on the LEC elevator, and thank the Commission for approving that. This project concerns removal of a stairway to nowhere on the first floor of this building. Originally, the stairs accessed all 3 floors of this building. When the building was remodeled for the County Administrative Center, the stairwell in this room was removed, but the bids were pretty high at that time for removal of the stairs between the first and second floors, so that was scrapped from the project. We tried it again, and these bids unfortunately came in substantially above the funding that we had set aside for this project. So the recommended low bid is to Paul Wurtenberger Construction in the amount of $67,500. But I'd be happy to answer questions and see what the commission wants to do with this one.
I think I only have one comment. Due to our budget constraints that we already have, that stairway is a great conversation piece to walk around every time you go to the treasurer's office. So I would file 13 the bid, in my opinion, fellow commissioners.
I heard from some employees regarding this issue, and they really thought this whole issue looks bad, spending this kind of money at this point in time for this project. I guess I'd ask you, Phil, just how unsafe is this stairwell? Is it going to fall through the floor or anything like that?
Thank you, Commissioner. No, we do not believe it's going to fall through the floor as long as nobody puts weight on it. So that is why the half wall is there, to prevent people from climbing on it. It's not safe for utilization, but we believe it is adequately supported as long as it remains in place with no weight on it.
I know oftentimes at the federal level, you always hear about the bridge to nowhere. Well, we got a stairway to nowhere.
Yes, we do. Any comments, Dustin?
No, I would echo with you guys. I don't think we go forward with this at all. I think when we can invest, we should invest, and this is more of a luxury thing to make things look better, and we just got to keep going with what we have and wait till better days to try and do this kind of luxury type of thing.
I think you got the message.
Thank you, Commissioners. Not especially surprised by that response.
Okay.
So next item
is
changes to personnel policy. This is an item that the Commission asked me to put back on at your April 3rd budget meeting. So a few of the items that we might want to address include adding an at-will employment statement to the personnel policy. And then your commission had mentioned the number of hours to define qualification for full-time benefits, the employee or the county's contribution to employee health insurance benefits, and accrual rates for paid time off. So I'd just be happy to receive comments from the commission, and if you want us to work on this, then we can bring something back with changes.
Well, I definitely think we should change the 40-hour-a-week status for full-time employment probably to 36 hours a week. I think would be a good start.
I agree. Dustin?
Yeah, I think that's going to save quite a few offices really good employees and keep them on, but save them some money in their budgets by not being able to bring down that hour requirement. So yeah, I like that.
Anything else but you wanted to add or not?
Well, on that, I think that's good. Let's see, were we talking about the benefits, the insurance benefit? That's mentioned in here too, isn't it?
It's mentioned, but I think that's...
Or is that for a different
I think
discussion?
that'll be... I guess I feel it's going to be for a different discussion if we choose to make changes to the benefits in the
Okay.
budget as we're talking about that.
I know
I
it,
think we want to change it in the policy as of yet, not until we make changes.
and I think in regards to the PTO time, from what Phil said, when we had our budget hearings, it is hitting the employees pretty hard if we start hitting PTO too. That might be a different discussion for a different time, but I'd be willing to let that go this year.
Okay, thank you. Dustin, comments?
Yeah, I mean, as long as we're not, I think we're already having these discussion talks on benefits, in budget process for next year. I do like the idea of the at-will statement in this policy. I think that makes it a little bit better put together personnel policy, in my opinion. But I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I think until we have actual further talks on our budget, I mean, I don't know that I want to change anything in the policy yet other than the 40 to 36.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that too.
And do we want to make a date that starts then?
Would be the easiest start date, Phil. Does it matter?
Start of new budget year or whatever.
Say start of the new budget year. As far as change, I mean, is that a possibility?
Yeah, I don't. Off the top of my head, I don't know the beginning of the payroll period closest to January 1, but we could look that up and bring it back with that change.
Let's do that, and then we can have a motion to make that change.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds good.
Okay.
That's that fair? Okay, thank you. Butch, you're good with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'm good with that.
Sorry, I wasn't avoiding you. All right. Next item, commission feedback on initial budget proposals. Phil, I'd just like to say you gave us a lot of options when we get to page, well, I guess it's actually page 97, but page 2, but there's a lot of unknowns out there yet, and I guess I feel until we get to see a lot of them unknowns, at this point I'd like to table the discussion on our budget until we see a lot of that before we start talking of doing any major cuts anywhere else, until we see some of these unknowns that you listed on page 2. I don't know how my commissioners feel about that, but that is something I was looking at. I mean, I don't want to, until we know what our health care costs are going to be, I don't want to talk about cutting health care. And until we know our revenue, what our revenue is going to be, shortfalls, etc., or it may be the other side, I guess it's pretty tough to cut on a budget until we know what we're actually going to have for revenue coming in, is my opinion. Butch or Dustin, feel free to chime in if you have anything else you'd like to add.
Well, I do agree with you, Dean. As we got the budgets in from the different departments, I don't know that there's a lot of cutting the departments can do at this point. I think if cuts need to be made further, it's probably going to have to be looking at hours of service and things like that. I mean, it's going to get bad. So we might, like Dean says, just wait and see what some of these other projections are before we move forward.
Because I know we still don't know what the health insurance premium is going to be, if it's going to go up, down, stay the same. Hardly anything ever goes down.
If it goes down, I'll buy you a steak dinner.
That's what I'm saying. Hardly anything ever goes down, but, we can always cross our fingers that maybe this is the year. But, I guess until we see some of them costs, I guess it's pretty tough to make decisions on the other, is my opinion. Dustin, go ahead.
I think now is when we have to, that first round was across the board. I think it was something where we got to see the willingness of some of the departments to get creative and do what they can. And you could tell how creative some of them had to get before they were talking about laying somebody off or cutting services already, even at 1.5%. And I think you guys are on board with me in knowing what those are. But I think now we got to start talking about some of these big budgets. Mm-hmm. And we need to start talking about what it looks like if we do a 3 to 5% cut in some of our bigger budgets. And so just remember, I always want the staff to realize in these processes that this is you giving us an opportunity to say yes or no. It doesn't mean that's actually what we'll go for, and I can understand the pushback that you would have. But I can tell you right now, especially as we start talking about trying to pass a quarter to half cent sales tax, I imagine the public is going to want to start seeing us make some tough decisions. And I agree with you. It's really tough for us to know what things are going to fall as far as some of these big expenses that we have. I think we do need to cut down on our benefits package because it's exorbitant. It's great to give it. It's not what we can afford. I think you guys would both agree with me. We love to be able to take care of people in terms of health care and stuff like that, but it's just not something we can afford anymore, and we're going to really struggle with the public if they don't see us starting to make some tough decisions. And Dean would know a lot better than I would as far as some of these departments and what we've done to them. There's a lot of departments that there's not a lot that we can do with. We're down to bare bones. But there's other ones where we need to start seeing what a lessening of service looks like. How much can you save us when we do this or that? And you know, we're talking big budgets like Public Works, EMS, Fire, Sheriff's Office. You know, those are some of the bigger ones. We spend a bunch of money on them because they're some of the most important departments we have, right? But I think we need to start having that discussion. I'm excited to be able to set in with the Sheriff's Office and learn a lot more about what they're doing, since I've already got to do that a little bit with EMS, and I'm going to learn a little more on Public Works too with our road tour. But I think now we start talking about some of the hard decisions, whether it be that we don't offer quite the service of EMS that we're talking about. That way the voters know what we're talking about if we're talking about funding EMS with a quarter-cent sales tax. Also, the idea that, you know, that we keep as many sheriff's deputies on the road at any given time as we do. I don't think the jail has any room from the looks of things. They need jailers. They're full all the time. There's a ton of people in there. So, you know, I know that's going to be a tough one to figure out. But like I said, I think we need to start seeing what these look like. And I'm okay with tabling it for a couple weeks while we put together, you know, in our minds what we think that should actually be, that percentage. But I think now it's time to start asking those bigger budgets what they can do and what it looks like, so that we can. I think we need to save, you know, probably another $500,000 to $750,000, and that's a lot of money. So,
Dustin, I don't disagree with you, but even when we talk about the big budgets, we get into personnel and services real fast. I mean, we're there already.
Yeah, you saw that from the sheriff's department. Sure. They almost had to do that right away with the 1.5. Well, and when you talk about bigger budgets, when you talk about a percentage, it's a lot of money. And
I did notice when we talk about the jail that I believe when the vouchers we just signed, they spent like $16,000 transferring prisoners to other counties.
Yep.
We need our jailers.
Yep.
You know, you just do. So it's going to get ugly.
Yep.
And I think something we need to keep in mind, too, in the past, Phil and Bill's both been here long enough, and our department heads, we've chopped into a lot of these departments hard over the past 4 years, I think it's fair to say, probably 3 years for sure. We've chopped into a lot of them departments, and it will come down to that. I mean, what level of service do you want? And I think that's something we're going to have to.
Well, and I think it's also something, that's a great point, and I think it's also something that we start looking into what the citizens of Ellis County are utilizing. And I think that's when we'll get into things like our health department. How much are people utilizing it? Things of that nature. And are we just going to keep staffing really high, hoping people show up, while Hayes Med is sitting there with these beautiful facilities and competition to our health department? Or do we, what do we make it decision-wise in that?
And we could hit those outside agencies for another couple $100,000 too.
Yeah, I know that's a comment. I was going to bring that up. Thank you, Butch. That's a comment, that Butch brought up a month ago, 3 weeks ago, that looking at outside agencies, and I think that's something we definitely need to look at also. But I don't know if there's any way of going back, and that'd probably be a ton of work, so I'll probably forget it. But if we could go back and look at the last 3 years, what our department heads have already gave up, as far as I know, Public Works is huge. Public Works has gave us lots of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I know, Becky's done that, Lisa's done that. I mean, all the departments have gave back, over the past years to try to keep this from going the other direction. And I definitely appreciate that. But going forward, if we're going to make larger cuts, I mean, it's going to be your outside agencies may get hit. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to have to look at the larger budgets, like you said, Dustin. Some of them, Public Works especially, I mean, I drove probably 50 miles of your roads today out in Ellis County, and I can tell you Bill's going to spend a lot of money fixing roads yet. They're open, but he's going to spend a lot of money fixing roads, just driving all the places I did today. I mean...
Yeah. Well, and I know you had alluded to that in budget talks, and you hate... I would say Public Works is the one that's the easy one to hit on. Nobody wants to hear anything about EMS or Sheriff's Department or things like that. They hit home a little harder for people in an emotional part, but I would say that, that's where tough decisions come. Like you said, we've stole from Public Works for quite a few years, and if we continue to do it, it's going to have to be a complete overhaul of what they actually do. It's going to have to be looking at how many roads we keep open. The hard decisions we were talking about last week when we were discussing a sales tax. Those hard decisions about what we can afford to maintain. And I can tell you right now, one thing that I don't ever want is to not be taking care of the agriculture and oil field workers, and they're the ones that use those roads. They might not be great in number, but they're big in their economic impact on our county, and so just to keep pushing them aside and making it harder on them isn't going to pay off in the long run. It's not an investment in our county.
Mm-hmm. So moving forward, Phil, I guess as you get more of this information that you referred to on page 2, I guess let us know, then we'll put it back on the agenda as you see some of the healthcare expenses and different revenues coming in, if you would, please.
Certainly. So a couple of things. You asked about history, and you do have a 3-year history on the sheet that talks about, how much each department has spent over the 3 previous years. So
I guess I want to go, how do I want to say that?
Staffing levels would be...
Thank you. That would be, because I know, Public Works, again, they're down 5, I think, or something like that, whatever. But I know there's a lot of positions, and that's what I was wanting to go back to, and thank you for bringing that up. As far as staffing that we haven't replaced in the last 3 years, and if it's huge to come up with, Phil, I understand it's not a big issue, but I know there's a lot of positions we haven't filled from Public Works on through where we've consolidated in other departments.
And then there's one particular number that I would love to have the commissioners weigh in on a little bit. And that is the salary adjustments for staff for 2020. At your meeting on April 3rd, you all indicated that you didn't particularly care for the number that you had received from the Wage and Benefits Committee, but then I got 3 separate answers to what you would like instead. So if there's just something that you could give me that I can take back to that committee as some direction, that would be super helpful.
Well, I believe the Wage and Benefit Committee wanted like a 2% cost of living increase plus some steps on some employees.
Correct.
Yeah, it was to complete the, essentially complete the Evergreen study, which would be step increases for folks at the 3-year and 1-year levels, and then a 2% cost of living.
And we don't know what the cost of living will be, but we definitely don't want to do the step increases from my perspective. I don't want to do those. If we keep our salary scale intact, we'll need some kind of cost of living increase.
Correct.
Whatever that might be, if it's 1% or 1.5% or 2%. But if we get behind that, then our whole plan is just no good anymore. So you almost have to keep that up.
You know, here would be my thought on that for you guys. That while you're alluding to the issue that was in my head as we finished up that talk, and that was what exactly would a cost of living increase look like? As they had suggested, it'd be a 2% cost of living increase. You know, I would say just saying 2% isn't probably the best way to go about that. I would say we should cap it at probably 2% in order to save our budget and know where we're going to be at. But, you know, every year the Social Security Administration comes out with a cost of living. I believe this year it was 2.8%. If it were similar next year, January, I think we could make that move and say, hey, it's 2.8, so we're going to do a 2% cost of living increase. If it were less than that, maybe we just go with the number that they go with. They're adjusting it. They're doing the math. They're making these adjustments for people that are on set levels of income and knowing what things are costing more. In all my discussions with people about this, they go, well, you know, the problem with the cost of living increase is typically we don't decrease your salary when gas gets real inexpensive or, you know, things actually get less expensive. So, you know, I would ask you guys if that's something you would entertain, the idea of let's go based on some statistical data from the Social Security Administration, and we go with their number next year. And cap it at 2%, and if it's less than that, that should be a good correlation of actually how much people are going to have to spend on basic everyday items.
I don't have a problem with that, Dustin,
Okay.
but we won't know that number when the budget is finalized.
Right.
We'll have to just leave it as is until we get that number.
That might be maybe we budget for 2% and then we go with the number on. Is that a possibility, Phil, in our budget process to budget for a certain amount and then say we're going to go with a number that the Social Security Administration comes with as our actual?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we can go ahead and just budget the 2, and then if it comes in later, I believe those numbers are typically known around October, somewhere in there, which is plenty of time to do the salary scale for January 1. Yeah.
If you guys like that idea, it's something I've
That's
been
fine.
thinking about. Yeah.
Sure.
Cap it at 2, Phil, with that number you can work with. Is that all right?
Thank you. That's good direction. I'll take that back to the committee.
Anything
Appreciate
else
that.
before we move on?
That's all I had for this evening.
Okay. Move on to our county councilor, Mr. Bill Jeter.
County Councilor Bill Jeter, I have nothing this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
County administrator report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, County Administrator Philip Smith Haynes. Few items. Commissioner Rhodes mentioned the road tour, so it looks like the afternoon of the 29th is going to work for everyone. So instead of starting in the morning, we'll try and do the afternoon. And so Bill and Kurt are putting together a schedule, and we'll get that noticed. And
Yeah, I believe any time after 1 o'clock is okay with me, Phil.
Okay, great. So the commission sent saved some money this evening on a couple of items. You did not replace or did not award those bids for the stairs, and also did not spend as much on election equipment as we had set aside. Unfortunately, I have some news to bring to your attention, which is at our law enforcement center, we share that facility with Hayes PD, and Police Chief Scheibler had been looking at some things, and he had noticed some things on the stucco or precast facade, as it's termed, on the second floor, and was wondering if we could freshen it up a little bit. So our buildings and grounds folks took a look at that, and we have some water intrusion behind that facade up there. So that's going to be a not inexpensive fix, probably right around the same number that you just saved on those stair bids, frankly. So I just wanted the commission to be forewarned that we're going to be getting an architect and doing some bids to address that issue, because we think saving the exterior of the LEC is probably a priority project. And then the last thing I will mention is that I will be out of the country starting on Wednesday of this week through next Tuesday. So Bill Ring will be the acting county administrator during my absence. He drew the short straw this time, so he will be taking that on. And I hope you will give him a suitably hard time. Yes. That's all I had this evening.
Thank you, Phil. Enjoy your time away. County Commission reports, Dustin?
This week I will do my orientation for Leadership Kansas, so I will be going to Lawrence and meeting all my classmates for the first time, so that should be an interesting thing at the end of the week. I'm not sure why they scheduled it for Holy Thursday and Good Friday, as I'd much rather done those with my family, but luckily I can meet up with them and celebrate Easter afterwards. The only couple other things I had, one was in relation to the talks that we had on the sales tax. I had quite a few people that had contacted me about something that I said, and I imagine that I said it, but maybe it was taken out of context. And what they were saying is that I was in favor of a 1/4-cent sales tax. In all reality, I'm in favor of letting Ellis County vote on a 1/4-cent sales tax. I don't know that I would be in favor of the tax on my own, but I think this is a business decision between Ellis County and us, and whether or not they want to keep the level of EMS service that we have, if we go that route to put it towards EMS. And I think it should just be a business decision between us. I think that we offer a very high-level EMS service, and I would be happy to continue doing that if that's what the people of Ellis County want to do. And I have all the faith in the world in Carrie and Jason to do a good job of explaining what we do, because almost nobody has any idea the level that we offer, and that's okay. Until you start thinking about what we're trying to do, which is attract people to Ellis County. And my parents can be a great example. They're starting to get to the age where they're looking at retirement. And I had the discussion with my father about, Hayes, if he'd want to move towards Hayes. And he said, oh, yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of things to do in Hayes. And I said, well, what do you think about our health care facilities? And he said, oh, I mean, probably one of the biggest reasons we would come there is because Hayes Med is right there. And I said, do you have any idea what a a paramedic EMS services comparative to what you have in Ransom, Kansas. And he said, wouldn't know a thing about it. And I said, okay, so we have a learning curve, because he will get at the age where he is susceptible to heart attacks, he is susceptible to all kinds of things, and the idea that we have people on call in a building ready to go to him, can administer medicine on site, and can save his life might be another great reason to move to Ellis County, Kansas. So, but like I said, I don't know that I'm in favor of it. I am almost always not in favor of taxation. It's my least favorite word, and we're doing this on tax day of all things. But this is a business decision that I want to have with Ellis County, Kansas, and if 50% plus one want to do that, I think that it's probably a worthwhile thing to look at. But that being said, I'm going to take the view that Philip has to take as our administrator, and that I just want to give information, and I don't want to say I'm in favor of it. And the words that I said were I would be in favor of a 25-cent sales tax for EMS, and the press had it in both their stories. And so I had quite a few people, well, what in the world? You know, we got you in there to be the guy that fixed these budgets and things of that nature. To that I said, I'm in favor of letting people have an opportunity to keep the level of EMS service that they have right now. I understand that our budget is the same now, dollar for dollar, as it was in 2012, not adjusted for inflation. So it's not as though this county hasn't been trying. It's just now it's going to get real hard. And so that was some clarification that I wanted to give in my report. Other than that, I have no other business.
Thank you, Dustin. Butch?
I have no report.
My only thing is I went to a little KAC out in Colby with quite a few of the staff that's present here today. It was very good. A few of the legislators were there, and they had good comments. We had Norm Bowers from local roads engineer. He gave reports on different things, maintenance and ongoing right-of-way issues and everything in the state of Kansas and counties. So it was very good. Phil sat in on our part with the commissioners and Public Works. Bill was there, Kurt was there also with us in that meeting. So just to let everybody know, 9/11 of this year, it'll be in Hays, Kansas at the Ellis County Fairgrounds. And I think we're going to have a really good KAC, or Northwest Kansas Highway Officials meeting in Ellis County. I had some more vendors today call and want to know if they could be part of it, which was great. And Donetta out at Public Works had a vendor stop by and want to know if he could be part of it also from Wichita. So I think we're going to have a really good Northwest Kansas Highway Officials meeting. So that's all I had. With that, we'll move on. I believe Butch has the motion for executive session.
Yes, I move that the Board of County Commissioners go to executive session to discuss non-elected personnel matters regarding transfer and promotion recommendations, include the Board of Commissioners, Administrator Phil, Councilor Jeter to initiate the meeting, and then we will have Darren Myers, Kerry McHugh, and Jason Kennedy as needed. And the meeting should take probably 30 minutes, so we'll be going till 7:05.
Do we have a second?
Yeah, I second that.
In favor, say aye.
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 Donna, motion carries 3-0. Guess we'll see y'all in 30.
Exactly. Good timing.
Hey,
Set time. You
Yeah,
have to get in here.
hey, when you have Phil in there, you don't have to worry. He has her down to the second. No action, Donna. And we will adjourn at 7:05. 5:05. That may not work. Thank you all for coming, even though the crowd got smaller.
It got a lot smaller, didn't it?